Hi, my name's Chris Anderson and I'm a financial advisor with the Edward Street branch of Morgans. Today I have Justin Hume with me, and this is the first in a video series called Beers with Mates Mentors, which is a second half of a monthly social event that I run called Beers with Mates. So the reason that we're here today, as you probably know, a big choice in your financial journey is picking a career that you really love, or being able to build a business that one, you love, and two, can generate some income for you. So I'll be interviewing business leaders like Justin to give you some ideas, to let you know that you're in the right direction, and it'll also just give you some opportunities to see that here we live in Brizzy, and it might not necessarily be a big city on the global stage, but we still have some people doing some very cool things. So with that, today's guest is Justin Hume from Knowledgeflux, and Justin's had a really interesting journey where he's done a whole lot of really cool work that mainly was in projects, and he's now at the point where he's built a product and it went really well, but he's looking to do something slightly different in future. So what we might do is just run through some of his story up till now and then look at the future towards the end. So Justin, just to start, how would you best describe what you've done so far in like a chronological series?
It was funny. At school, I decided that I didn't want to do technology. I said I'm not doing IT. 2 years later, I enrolled into IT. After printing the programmer's paycheck, I figured that was all right. So yeah, I did an IT degree on business information systems, and I got quite interested in knowledge and strategy, and how knowledge can be captured in computers, and how to turn that into value. It's a tricky area, a lot of failures in that area. So I then went down to Canberra, worked for a big consulting company, CGI, and multi-billion-dollar projects, ATO, immigration, then moved into web portals for large organisations. Worked for Rio Tinto for 5 years, looking after their intranet/portal. These things are there to help people get access to information or data or processes people. That's what they do. And I always thought that it could be better. The work that people do, how do we capture that and encode that and build bodies of knowledge that are digitized so that we can automate things like information delivery or on-the-job training, or shorten up process to go, hey, we always repeat this thing, or we kind of expect this behavior, so let's automate it. And that's sort of where Knowledgeflux came from, and that would have been 2011, after working as a contractor for about 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm. And so when you started at Knowledgeflux, was there a big question that you were looking to answer, or how did it all sort of start out? You've obviously been working with information in these big companies, and you could see that things could do it better. Did you have a starting point, or did you meet some people and get something together?
I took a year off.
Yeah, right.
I took a year off. My aunt lives in Colorado, so in Aspen they have the Ideas Festival, which really inspired me. It's not cheap to go to, but I talked to people who are very well known, met Marissa Mayer from Google, talked to venture capitalists, and all this was new to me, startups, but over in the US obviously it's huge. Mm. So I just saw so many ideas from defence, politics, science, technology. I came back and just did a big mind map, and I had 60 ideas, and I thought, what do I do? I'd done a bit of coding, so I knew how to make stuff, but I then realised I need to make money, so I started to think about how I could do services to make that happen. Mm-hmm. So I started a services business, and it grew a lot quicker than I expected. Mm-hmm. I hired someone with not much money in the bank, and then along comes the first project. We're making a product, and then we got more projects, and within 18 months I think we were about 8-9 people.
Okay.
Were clients were Dreamworld, Brisbane Markets, and some interstate companies as well. I reached out to SAP because I'd worked with SAP a lot at Rio Tinto. They had a startup program, so I joined that. And you get access to their technologies and the ideas as you build on top of that. And they liked what I had, and quite quickly I found myself getting pushed into building a product that I probably wasn't really ready to make.
Okay.
Because I was still exploring the space, and it's a space where in the early 2000s there was a lot of failures of people trying to do knowledge technology. So nevertheless, we made a product for this competition that was global. It was a proof of concept, and ended up in Orlando at the SAP conference, presenting on SAP TV, and we got runner-up Most Innovative Global Award. But it was quite hard to take that idea to market because it was more like, how do you report on the knowledge created and generated? This is things like documents people create or consume, or it's sort of how do you measure the information consumption and creation. Okay. But it was just too hard to pull the data together for that. And so that prototype turned into a new product, which was actually, it's like an intranet. It's like a digital workspace that is designed to make it easier to find things, to work together, to see processes, to visualize the steps. And that led into that, and that sort of took us all the way through to 2016.
All right. And so when you'd actually built Knowledgeflux and you'd built that product, did you also then feel that grew quicker than you expected, or how did that all sort of look? Like, was it a case of...
Yeah, look, and this is a lesson. I'm happy to share this. We took on too much cost in what really was a project-funded company.
Okay.
So cost being HR staff, and eventually that led to an undoing of almost an undoing of the group of companies. So happy to explain that. So the tech was, it excited a lot of CIOs. I'd presented at conferences where you have one-on-one meetings with CIOs. I'd been to 3 of those, and met some mentors who are CIOs, and they sort of helped guide me and coach me and connect me. But still, we were sort of we weren't funded like a US company would be with millions of dollars. I'd hired a number of graduates, an associate professor, so we had some senior people and some junior people. One continued to win project work, got something with the university here, and unfortunately we won the work and did the prototype, but the funding slowed up. And I'd restructured the company because the university product was actually quite a cool thing, and there was 5 other unis interested in it, and it was based a bit on the core technology we were making, but because that project slowed up, and because of the HR debt we had, it ended up going ahead, but it was a bit late, and I didn't know much about HR debt.
Right.
Every time you hire someone, there's roughly a $10,000 liability if you have to pay them out at a certain point.
Okay.
So you don't learn this in an IT degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you probably don't learn it in a business degree either.
Yeah. On your balance sheet, you want a HR liability cost. Anyway, so yeah, that I was lucky that product and that company was set up in a subsidiary, and I did that because I was expecting to chase capital and funding, because I'd have one university, then I'd have another 4 universities. We'd have good regular revenue, potentially 5-10-year contracts.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd made it.
Right.
I thought it was, okay, that's it. But the opposite happened when the project funding slowed up. Took 9 months before it kicked off, and that company ended up insolvent.
Okay.
And that put everything on ice, and that's really been the case until really middle of this year, so started to crank things up again, and ideas for a new product.
Yeah.
Because the big product we were making that is the intelligent workspace. It's got a big upfront cost to get into that. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It needs $2.5 million to finish the product. Okay. So we're talking big money. it would be a great product, but the challenge is the sale is, it's not like cloud software or SaaS products where you might be getting high volume, lower pricing revenue. This is big ticket, few sales, so there's more risk in that type of business model. But we knew that, and we figured that that was the way to go. So the new product we're looking at is it's actually created to make software or digital products easy. We want to make it a fairly straightforward process to go through to build a product that's online or in the cloud, has cloud-based revenue, is user-centric, designed around users, and most importantly, not too hard to manage. We don't want you to have an IT degree to manage your digital product.
So just so I'm sort of clear, you built Knowledgeflux, and a lot of what you did was in a 3D gaming environment, which could make it look like really anything you wanted, look and feel.
Yeah.
And
it's like Minecraft, but for work.
Right.
That's
cool. And so, because you've done all of this, you're now in a position to be able to make digital products for other people, or?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Having gone through the process of building a product and I won't say making mistakes, but choosing hard problems rather than easier problems. I learned a lot about, my career has been designing software, usable software. So the front of it and the back of it. And that process could be easier. So that's part of the process you go through and you make a product. Of course, there's the marketing, the business model, the business side, and then that flows into features that do stuff of value. So we're stitching all that together, but having gone through one product and been through that, I've gone, well, hold on, that process can be easier. And it's also something I've done and I know a lot about and, pretty passionate about.
Cool. So I could be a young guy with a few ideas but no real IT knowledge who could potentially come to you and you could work out a solution, or?
There's probably different levels of users for this. It's not going to be something that, say you got $1,000 for a website. It's probably not going to, at the moment, it's probably not going to hit that market. It's more a small or medium-sized company that may have a budget of 50, 100 grand to start with.
Cool.
But they may not have the resources to have their own full-time IT staff. So they can go through, and it's kind of like building a house. You'll sort of be given the tools to put the plans, the floors, the piping, the electrics. You can kind of drag all that stuff on, and then once it's put together, we could help you build it. We might, depending on budgets, we might have people here, or we might have people offshore. Cool. And this will give the transparency and ideally the QA that you have to go, okay, I'm not dealing with some yahoos offshore somewhere who are just going off on a tangent. We've talked about the shape of this house.
Right.
We're going to make these walls and these windows and these doors. Why have you made that stuff? Because it wasn't on the plan. So that's sort of the traceability and visibility we want to bring in, but also simplify the process. And
so if I looked at the opportunity of coming to see you, but then I was looking at other options in the market, would I find many, or?
You'll find patches.
Okay.
So you might, what'll power this tool, the process, is it's been around for 20 years, but it's arguably academic. I've simplified it, but that process, you'll see tools that hit the sort of the business planning quadrant, you'll see tools that hit the design quadrant, you'll see tools that hit the project management quadrant, and you'll see tools that hit the support quadrant. You don't see anything that really pulls it together. We're not trying to play just in one. We might integrate rather than sort of compete. If that makes sense. Stitch it together.
Yeah, and so really you could be that one contact that someone would have when they have a $50,000 budget, let's say, to pull something together. You could do the majority of it for them based on what you're developing.
Yeah, we want to make that process, if people want to own more of the process, they can. And in doing that, you'll save money for development, because that's ultimately where you turn ideas into reality.
Cool. And so, do you expect that there's going to be much of a team around to have to help you, or will you be able to do a lot of it, or?
So Knowledgeflux is a team.
Yep.
I set it up, but there's a number of co-founders. There's 4 of us at the moment, and I'm open to expanding that. I work a little bit differently to some startup models.
Okay.
Some startups have like equal co-founders, or some startup models have just one. I'm something in between. So I've sort of driven and been the idea for a lot of this stuff. But if people want to get involved and help, then it's a win-win outcome is what I look for. So we've got the team and the diverse skills to make this happen.
Yeah.
And in parallel, we're always doing our services. So I'm doing a contract right now.
Yeah.
The model that we've done too, and this could anybody wants to talk to me about this offline, I'm happy to. There's ways of at least contractors or IT contractors working through one company in sort of tax efficient ways to use your pre-tax dollars to grow and develop a business without actually having to go and chase funding.
Right.
So it's taken me quite a few years to work out the levers and buttons for that model, but it's an effective way. So the group of us, we're resourced and skilled to take this forward.
It's super cool that you've been able to do what you've done, but one thing that interests me is, like, how is it that you came to the realization that you could have an idea, but then you could actually turn it into a product?
Yeah, well, that happened when I was in the US at the Aspen Ideas Festival. I met a lot of successful people, some of the rock stars of science. Brian Greene, the physicist, Marissa Mayer, as I said earlier. I even got a taxi home with a 4-star Army general who just toured the Aussie coast in a chopper. And so, you know, I was full of these ideas and successful people. I was standing in a meeting and Alan Greenspan was right next to me. We were both watching something about finance, I can't remember. But, you know, I just came back with all that energy, and I figured I had to do something. I was interested in mobile health, actually, which is devices and sensors, and there were health themes at that conference, so I was looking at all different technologies that could be put together to do mobile health, so tracking, and now I got trackers and all that sort of stuff, you know. But I didn't really have the skill set or team to do that, so I sort of fell back into IT and went up to the uni, where I went to uni up at Griffith, and pulled out all these books on AI and knowledge management, and not just ideas, but like ways of making it happen, and started to learn about some new technologies from gaming tech. I made a game for fun, just a simple, silly little game, but I learned whole new ideas around that. So I sort of went from ideas to a little bit of research, to prototyping. Probably one thing that I would advise myself back then is don't get too stuck in the research, because it was fun, but it sort of did lend me down more of a technical path rather than I've got to solve someone's problem path, which is key. And I think it was 3 years later, I was at a venture capitalist in Sydney. Can't remember their name, but he saw the technology introduced through a mentor, and he said, "This is quite cool, it's pretty amazing, but it might be worth $1 million. And I can get another database and I can make $1 million off it. But if that database is used to improve air safety or the efficiency of how planes come and land, that business problem's worth $100 million."
Right.
So what you do with the technology you make is more important.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. You go from idea and you get excited, and something that allowed me to do it. I chose to take the risk And because as a contractor, I just figured I won't work for a year. So I took on more risk than I probably would have preferred in hindsight, because I ended up getting a big pay cut for a couple of years, and probably didn't need to do that. This second time round, we're launching a new product without actually compromising incomes. So we're learning how to be more efficient and leaner, and essentially there's no need to bring up your overheads until you've got some revenue from your product. So we had an office in the city.
Yeah.
Didn't really need it. It helped, but it wasn't critical.
Yeah. And so, obviously we're in Brizzy. You've got a Brisbane-based startup, but the initial ability to make that idea happen came from the US, where, as we know, there's just a mentality there where we just make things happen. Do you think, how would you have been able to be in Brisbane or Melbourne or Sydney or somewhere in the middle of Australia and be able to somehow get that same mentality? Like?
Well, it was when I left Australia, I think River City Labs had just started. So Steve Baxter, hands down to that fella, having pioneered, at least in Brisbane, I think Sydney and Melbourne had startup things, already going. They might have been a few years ahead, but Steve did it in Brisbane. He brought, I guess, he put the land up that the ideas were able to nurture, and so I was one of the first companies, not the very first, but within the first 12 months into River City Labs. I think there was about 20 companies when I went there. And that ecosystem was very supportive. A lot of people with ideas, some people doing stuff, some people failing. And I know a lot of companies that were around me then have failed. We've kept on, but that's really only because of the services. It's not because startups are about products, not really services. So, I think the infrastructure is here now. So there's less reason to go, well, why not?
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And so
ecosystem, startup ecosystem is up and running now.
Yeah, and obviously we're in a global world. There are people with these skill sets elsewhere. How do you then tie in globally, and would you want to?
I've learned the lesson. The answer is you generally don't want to.
Okay.
Generally. So when I started, one of my colleagues worked for an Indian company, and I just reached out to, because I knew a lot of Indian developers. I reached out and found myself in Bangalore, talking to some people who I'd been online chatting about and bouncing ideas and looking at code they've written. And so I found myself in Bangalore and jumping off a train and then on the back of motorbikes through peak hour traffic and all sorts of smells, and that was a really cool adventure. But ended up setting an office in Bangalore. A bit before its time again, but we shut that down 18 months later, and we were finding it was more efficient to use local people, especially for services. You can charge, like you charge more, but you get more done. There's less communication breakdown, and that applies to your team. So if you have a development team offshore, unless it's crystal clear what they need to do, you'll probably find you're going to bounce back and forth a lot more. I had my on-site team here in the city office turning stuff around in 2 weeks, very quickly. That would have taken 2 months offshore.
And in that environment, does it matter to be able to do stuff quickly, or is it more important to keep costs down?
It's both.
Yeah, right.
I think the winning ticket is you want to build a team. You want to build a team where at least someone can develop. I really believe that if you're going into a technology startup, the ability to write code needs to be embedded in at least one of the co-founders.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think they say you need a hustler, a hacker, and a designer now. And I think that's right.
Yeah.
And it might be as you scale up, you want to get that revenue from your product going before you scale up. And you only want to take investment once you've proven you've got revenue on customers. That's another lesson I've had.
So was it hustler, hacker and designer?
Yeah.
Which of those hats do you feel most comfortable wearing?
I'm a generalist, so I'm okay at all three.
Okay.
I used to teach coding. I've generally done design in my career and not coded, and I've sort of had to learn the hustle. So
yeah.
Am I great at any one of them? Maybe design.
Okay.
Good, maybe not great. Yeah.
And then the other thing, all this has happened. How does timing play a part in all of the things that have been going on for you?
Yeah, timing. It's funny you say that. I was watching a YouTube video. I forget the guy's name, but I think he has Idea Lab or something in the US, and they've mentored a bunch of companies you've heard and seeded them. Greg Krug's or something. Anyway, there were 5 factors that he looked at across all these startups to work out which was the most important factors, and there was funding, there was timing, there was team, there was idea. I forget the other few, but the number one, the top 3 that came up after the study was timing, which surprised me. Idea was number 2 and team was number 3. And funding, again, wasn't relevant, and that sort of does hark back to if you really can take something to market with minimal resources and get customers, then you're really only looking for funding to scale.
And then, let's say I was someone who wanted to have a startup. How would I find mentors in the industry?
So I'm always happy to have a coffee with someone. I've found that people are often out there to give time. I've had coffee and meetings and regular meetings with people who sit on big company boards, people who now own their own 700 strong companies. But that's a little bit through the network. River City Labs and like Little Tokyo and those sorts of places, they've got networks and mentors now. So part of the ecosystem, I do believe, is they talk about failing and you learn from failing, and some people don't get funding until they've failed. I think there's a lot of value in that. So Brisbane, to me, if there's been a wave of startups, I think we're in a second wave or maybe a third wave. Draw a start wherever you want, but to me, I saw a wave a few years ago, and now more people are doing it, and I think you should be trying to find the people who have been in that first wave, or even earlier, their own businesses.
Yeah, cool. And then, just to get a gauge of that, when you're trying, obviously you can do the idea and you can have someone help you with the idea, and then you can build a team and you can have someone help build that team. How do you know that the timing's right? For whatever it is that you built.
The product.
Yeah.
Market research will help. So the first product, the intelligent workspace, in a sense that was after the knowledge management wave, which was the early 2000s.
Okay.
And knowledge management, in a sense, parts of it have, I guess, revived in the AI, because you've got to encode knowledge into graphs or whatever for AI to run on. So cognitive computing runs on what I call knowledge, but the old stuff, so I've got this dilemma, or I had this dilemma where, knowledge management V1 failed. Is this AI world V2? Yeah, they're related, no doubt. This new product, I've done a little bit of research, and it's around digital product management. Big companies are going to start shifting from project thinking into product thinking. A McKinsey article and a few other articles in the last year or two I've seen, that instead of these big projects or things being internally, that the product mindset adds in your your business model, your market research, your customer centric, user design. There's more emphasis on that. So it's kind of a casing around the old sort of project management concepts. So I think this new product is going to time well. But I met someone in Sydney at a conference. It was September, they call it Tech 23, September 23 every year, and it's a big startup conference in Sydney. And this old fella walks in the room, he's 70, grey haired, and he's got Microsoft Research. And I'm like, who's this fella? Anyway, I had a chat, and he is one of the godfathers of the original personal computer in the 70s, the PDP, DEC Corporation, which I think was bought out by HP and then, or Compaq, then HP, and then Dell, or I'm not sure. So I said to him, you've seen a lot of startups in your time. What's the success formula? He said luck.
Really?
And I think timing, you know, that there's factors there I think you can control. If you see a problem and it's a real problem, then you do the research and you do the competitive analysis. There's a fair chance I reckon you'll succeed. But there's also some luck. I think for every one Elon Musk, there's 100 that you haven't heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
Same abilities.
Right.
And he was the lucky one.
Okay. And so you think that there are 100 other people that are similar to Elon Musk. It's just that luck hasn't worked out for them and we don't know about them?
Yeah, well, he got into, what was his PayPal, and that gave him some money, and then he got into the next, and then the next, right? So it's that little spark. It is being able to get away from the constraints, economic constraints that 90% of us have. You know, we've got a power mortgage and all that, and I think that unfortunately is a real barrier, which is why I like these incubators, but still it doesn't solve your rent.
Yeah.
If I made $10-20 million, I'd think about a farm where people with cool ideas could come along and just shack up for the year and zero cost and go for it.
And so for you, if money wasn't a thing, or you could provide that farm for young people or older people or whoever has an idea that can go up and do it, what really excites you about is getting a team together, hashing something out, and then seeing what you can make out of it.
Yeah, so lately I've been quite interested and excited about, you know, the idea of product management and product management advisory, which is a service I'll be starting up next year, sometime next year. And what's cool about product management, again, it's the hacker, the hustler, the coder. You've got your business team, you've got your comms team, you've got your design, your artwork, you've got your technical, you've got your data, you've got all this stuff that has to come together for success. And doing it together and the team aspect, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we've probably covered everything. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, happy to. If anybody ever wants to, you know, reach out, happy to have a chat, coffee. Yeah.
I think the one thing I will say is, obviously you left Australia and you saw other people doing cool things and you realised you could come back to Australia and do that. And one of the reasons I've set up this series is because I don't think we, as people who've grown up in Brisbane, get the opportunity to see other people in Brisbane doing amazing things. Or we don't necessarily get the opportunity to go overseas and witness what's possible.
So I think that was the case when I started on this journey, and I think it was just changing. So I think the message I'll put out there now is get out, join Silicon Beach on Meetup. There's a number of meetups where there's people starting companies, or they've got ideas, they're socialising them. The conversations are about, you know, pitching and raising capital. They can be premature, but the ecosystem is there now. So first, you know, there's nothing stopping a after Friday after work, go to one of those functions, drop into a River City Labs or a little Tokyo, Lismore, the capital. Go to those functions. You'll meet people doing it, and there are people now who are selling their companies. So I know someone who's just sold their company to Deloitte. I know of another company that's been sold for $31 million to Accenture.
Okay.
And these are Brisbane companies.
Yeah, cool.
So, and I know there's other startups in Brisbane that are doing well now. I can't recall them. So, it's here.
The other side of that is obviously you've got an IT background. A lot of people that work in IT spend a lot of their time online. Do you think you would have met the same people or found the right opportunities if you tried to do it all online, or did you need to meet people in person?
You got to learn how to network.
Yep.
Yeah. When I started, I was a bit awkward.
Okay.
Needed to have extra few beers to get around, right?
Yeah.
But now it's standard.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't do it you got to develop those skills if you're going to be a founder.
Right. Well, I think the cool thing coming out of that is that this is Beers with Mates Mentors. I run a monthly meetup called Beers with Mates on the first Thursday of every month. And I actually built that because I'd seen something in Canada when I lived in Toronto. I'd never seen it like it before. It's a pretty simple idea. It's just some interesting questions in a group of people. But he was trying to build it towards a business model, and the business model didn't necessarily work. So it was something that he just let go. And I came back to Brizzy and I went, you know what? I could do the same thing here because the underlying idea was good. And what's really cool now is I'm seeing that come into fruition. And it's not to make money. It is just to have a good group of people get together. And it's pretty cool when I know that one group of my mates meets another group of my mates and we all get along and have an interesting chat over a few beers. So obviously the flip side of that is if you feel like you're uncomfortable, obviously you're going to need to learn to network, and it's easier if you're amongst sort of friends and friends. So that's kind of the whole point of that event.
And if you've got an idea, well, that sounds like a great event. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you've got an idea, you start to socialise. Like, don't give all the secrets away, but socialise it. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find at that point where you have an idea and then you talk about it with someone else, other things come up for you? Or is that some of the way that you do your thinking, or are you best on your own thinking about
my
those
stuff?
things?
So the first product was ahead of the curve.
Okay.
So I had a lot of trouble talking to people about it. And that might actually be a red flag.
Okay.
If you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
So I constantly was trying to explain what this thing did.
Yeah, right.
And even after years of it, I'm better now, but I still haven't nailed it.
Okay.
So I think the second product, it's a lot easier. I explain it and people go, oh yeah, I get that. Oh, what if it did this? Oh yeah, it could. Yeah.
Cool.
So definitely. I mean, that's one of the things. It's when you do your minimum viable product, you got to know your customers and you got to validate with them. You got to validate early, and that is, you can validate an idea. You could then draw something on the back of a notepad, a screen, and then validate that. You don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on code. I haven't done this, but I've got friends who just throw up a website with some questions and some ideas, and then they SEO it, get the ranks, and people who are looking for something to solve that problem, they've got the data there.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm like, that's cheeky, but
Yeah.
you haven't made the product yet, but you're promising it. But it's really a market survey, so.
Cool. Well, Justin, thanks very much for your time, mate.
No worries,
I really
Chris.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing what's in store for you in the future.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, and if people do want to reach out, what's the best way to find you?
You'll find me on LinkedIn, Justin Hume. That's probably the simplest, and from there, emails, phone numbers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks again.
Cool.
Yes. So thanks very much for joining us today for what was the first of the Beers with Mates Mentors series. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Justin, I know I learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our events on the first Thursday of every month. And I look forward to speaking with you soon. Bye.